Good day, everybody. Happy Friday. Buckeye Friday is back. We're here. We're looking forward to a Saturday afternoon game, even though I hate 3:30 games because it sucks up the middle of the day. It'll be 2:30 for Dan. The Iowa Hawkeyes come to town. Dan, Big Ten football isn't getting any easier. Kirk Ferentz in his 97th year coaching for Iowa. It's the same team every year, every time we play him. But how are you feeling going into the game?
I feel really good. I think that we're going to make a statement. I think that, we had our first real test last week, and I do think it was a test in the sense that, it was another Big Ten team. It was on the road. It was at night. They had a good, solid, front four, if not front 6 or 7, mobile quarterback, a couple good skill guys. And I expect the defense to come out and make a statement this week after 2 straight weeks. And I'm feeling really good about it.
Yep. I like where we're at. I am curious to see because that Caleb Johnson kid, we can talk a little bit more about it, but he definitely put a little bulletin board material out in one of his interviews. He's one of those kids that, again, he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. But since we're talking Iowa, Dan, and man, you've been on a heater. He said you're off the warming plate on Monday when we talked. So, Buckeye best bets. What are you giving everybody this week? A little bit of that action if you want to take it.
So yeah, I've won 6 in a row. Started out the first week 0-2. Feel really good about the last few weeks, last few games. So 6-2 overall in the season, 6 straight. Got 2 more plays for this week. The first one is going to be Ohio State total team points over 16.5 in the first half.
I like that.
All right. And then I've got Ohio State total team touchdowns over 3.5 for the game.
Okay. I like that too.
I wouldn't be shocked if we have a defensive touchdown this week, whether it's a fumble recovery, strip sack, fumble recovery, or a pick. I think McNamara, is prone to make that happen. The numbers are a little low, but, on both of those plays, you're laying a lot more than normal, 10% juice, which tells me that they're very attainable numbers. So I like it. I like what I got.
Yeah, I like the 13.5 for sure. I think that
16.5.
As a 16.5.
First half.
Yeah, I like that play. And it just kind of reviewing the numbers. The last time we played Iowa, I think we ended up scoring 55 total.
Yeah.
So I like that. I wouldn't be afraid of that at all. And I do think that I think Will Howard is going to have a good game in the passing game this week. So I like that. Since we're talking about Iowa, Dan, I found this was on Twitter and I thought it was really interesting. And let me see if I can find the picture. Maybe basically the idea is what is the best tradition in the Big Ten, and so there's a few that they've listed, and I thought it would be fun just to talk about this before we get into things. So obviously it's not Mr. Brightside, huh? They didn't rank him. It's like what
Mr. Brightside. That is just awful.
They want to know what you think. So you have Mr. Brightside, no way. The whiteout's fun. Jump around is cool. I've not actually been to that. So I've been to a whiteout. And I'd love to go do the wave at Iowa. It's just an emotional moment for anybody that has kids. You got Script, Ohio. So, Dan, we don't have to rank them. Maybe just top 2. What are your top 2?
Well,
it's tough.
It's so stupid.
It's new too. It's not like it's an old tradition.
Bizarre. I mean, every tradition was new at one time. So I'm not gonna. Right. It's just weird. Like what? It's just stupid.
Well, the craziest thing about it, it's about a guy's girl cheating on him.
Well, the cheating theme is strong and heavy in Ann Arbor.
I know, but the whole song is about him basically knowing that his girl is cheating on him.
Yeah, I think that started shortly after Harbaugh started. So that makes sense. It makes total sense. Maybe there's a meaning there.
Yeah.
The whiteout is just awesome, but it's not original. Let's be clear about that. The Winnipeg Jets started the whiteout tradition in sports, as far as I know, when they started doing whiteouts in the playoffs decades ago.
Yep.
and they brought that down to Phoenix when they relocated in '96 or '97, and I actually went to a first round Game 7 whiteout, and it was the most electric sports atmosphere I've ever been in. It was unbelievable. Um, but that's not original for Penn State, so that's a
Yep.
disqualifier. Um, it's funny we rip on Brightside, but then jump around. I guess because it's been around longer, it's kind of like cool.
Yeah, this
But I
started in
would
the
say the top
90s,
two
and
are, yeah. I would say the top two though are Script, Ohio, and the Hawkeye Wave, and while the Hawkeye Wave tugs on your heartstrings, so does Script, Ohio for us Buckeye fans. So
yep.
call me
Yep.
biased. Script, Ohio is the best tradition in the Big Ten.
I think so too. It's the longest standing tradition because the Children's Hospital, it's been renovated, but it's still within the last 30 years that they've done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of weirdly of Jump Around, just because I remember in the early 2000s, Ohio State being in some of those bangers with Wisconsin, and they get to the end of the third quarter and it's a night game and the student section is going crazy and they're playing Jump Around. And you're like, oh, great, here we go. And the old momentum. And then Terrell Pryor steals it away. But, still. And before, I have one other thing. And I already know that my good friend, Chuck, is going to make fun of me because every week I have something to say about Joel Klatt. He got on me yesterday on his
He
show.
called you out. He called you out yesterday about it.
Oh yeah, every Saturday, Chad has something to say about Klatt. So
Yeah.
Chuck, I hear you. I'll try to ease up a little bit. I don't know, man. Like he's become in the last few years, he's just become this clickbait guy that I
It's exactly what he is.
think he'd be. So
yeah, it's exactly what.
So he tweets this out. Joel Klatt's college football playoff prediction. So preseason, he had Ohio State, Georgia, Utah, Miami for his top four. And now he's got Texas, Ohio State, Clemson. And shout out to our good friend Chef from the Cocaine Willie podcast, the Kansas State Wildcats. What do you think?
You know what? I am surprisingly. I think the only way Texas ends up number one is if they run the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if we run the table and Texas has one loss, I think we're there. I'm surprisingly on board. I'm buying stock in Clemson now.
Mm.
Their offense looks better than it has in a few years, and they've always played good defense. They haven't necessarily played anybody significant yet, as far as I remember, but they look a lot better than they did week one against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean Georgia's significant. They ran roughshod over them. So
yeah, well, in the second half, I mean it was 6-0 at halftime, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very low scoring at half. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Big 12 spot, man, I can't help but to think that's going to change like every other week throughout the season.
I feel that way.
I think those guys are going to beat up on each other. I'm holding out hope for Arizona. Arizona went in and last week beat Utah at Utah.
Yep.
That loss to K-State was not a conference loss for them. So if they can play defense the way they did against Utah for the rest of the year, then they could separate themselves. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I mean, even Colorado's in it. They had a pretty impressive win going to UCF and putting up points they did. I don't know if they'll be able to stop a prolific offense along the way.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I still think Oklahoma State has an outside shot. I just feel like
don't they have two conference losses already?
I know, but Mike Van Gundy, he's a second half of the season coach. All right, you just never know. So those were my two fun things I wanted to talk about, Dan, or sort of fun things, non-Buckeye things. So massive list of visitors this weekend, and I actually was having a tough time even compiling the list, and I think there's even more been added. I picked up on this morning, but so just looking through it, you have Tavien St. Clair as far as committed players. It's Tavien St. Clair, Zion Ziggy Grady, TJ Alford, Riley Pettijohn, and Devin Sanchez, all from the class of 2025, already committed. From the class of 2026, you have Sean Alston, the running back. It's nice to get him on campus. Tight end Evan Jacobson, a priority target for them. Offensive lineman Adam Guthrie still doesn't have an offer. Offensive lineman Will Conroy, offensive lineman Max Riley, both, I think are, in my opinion, must-gets for Ohio State. Defensive back Dorian Barney, he's committed to Alabama, but he's still taking visits, which is interesting to me.
He's a
And then
26 kid, right?
yeah, and then the other two 26 kids are Caden Gerhart, the safety, and then Inami Smith, another safety. And then there's actually a class of 27 kids going to be there. So as we've talked about before, Brady Edmonds will be there. Running back Julian Baker, he's somebody I've been keeping my eye on, but it's a little far down the road. And then one to really put a feather in your cap, Dan, and we'll have to pay attention to him over the next year, is Jameer Brown, the wide receiver. He's another prototypical Brian Hartline guy, and I would be shocked if he doesn't end up in Columbus. But that's the list that I have as of now. I've even heard there may be even more, but it's a huge recruiting weekend. So that's why I think Ohio State cranks it up a notch on Saturday too. Roll out the red carpet. They're going to have a big showing for visits, and then I expect a big game from Ohio State. So
Yeah, I think both the Stewart and the Jones kid from New Jersey, the commits from New Jersey, are going to be there this weekend.
Yeah. Desai Jones, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm a little surprised Eli Lee's name's not on here. I'm sure he'll be there.
Yeah.
He always is. Got to wonder about Carter Lowe. Since it's an afternoon game, can he come down?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of those guys in that are already commits.
Yeah.
And again, a lot. I've been paying attention because right now, Ohio State is definitely like playing defense with some of their commits and then trying to flip others. So, it's kind of a catch-22 right now. Ohio State for the class of 25 for offensive line, they have to flip somebody. And, and then they're playing defense with the Naeem Alford stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that there's a lot of rumors about him going to the Iron Bowl and all this other stuff. And his dad spoke up immediately online and said, I don't know where this is coming from. Like, I haven't even thought about the Iron Bowl. If I had to guess, I'm really confident that Auburn's not in the picture for him.
Just
Alabama, the only one that worries me a little bit, to be honest with you, and it's because they're throwing ridiculous money out there, is Oregon, But, I think his dad said something along the lines of, Auburn's in the backyard, why wouldn't the kids be going to see their games,
Yeah. Well, there were some missteps, in his recruitment, with Auburn and some of the other things. So go ahead.
Yeah, Auburn was leading with NIL, and they were going directly to the kid, right?
Yeah.
They were trying to circumvent the father, and it was all about money, and that rubbed his dad the wrong way.
Yeah, I just wouldn't stay with missteps, but that works too.
And then the Alabama thing was, there was another incidence of rubbing things the wrong way. So
yeah, it's interesting. I understand. Let me say this. I understand why people in Alabama, at Alabama or at Auburn, given that he's an Alabama kid, want him to stay home. It's no different than us wanting Trey McNutt to stay home, like in an expectation that you're from Ohio, you should play for Ohio State. And so I get it. Like, I understand that mentality. So of course there's going to be rumors and hope and, all of those things. Like, that's just going to happen. Like that, pulling a 5-star kid out of somebody else's backyard, people are going to think those things.
Regarding Alford, last thing regarding Alford, he was supposed to be in Oregon for our game against them. And I think it was maybe Berm mentioned that he's not going to be there anymore.
I didn't catch that, but my schedule's been brutal. So I honestly haven't caught a lot of the shows that I like to catch. I feel I have a bunch saved, like to go back and listen to. And a lot of times by the time I do that, the information has moved on and I'm like, well, crap, I already know all of this, because of Twitter and the world we live in. So,
yeah.
So let's take a look, Dan. National rankings: Ohio State versus Iowa. For scoring offense, we are number 3 currently. Iowa is 53, kind of about what I expected. That's probably a little higher for Iowa than I really would have thought. But they're usually middle of the pack, so I guess that's middle-ish. Passing, Ohio State 14th, and Iowa 124th, kind of what I would expect with Cade McNamara. Rushing, Iowa is 10th. Ohio State is 14th, which, we've also kind of called the dogs off too, if you think about some of this. So total offensive output, Ohio State is at 5, Iowa is at 65. Scoring defense, Ohio State first, Iowa 15th. Passing, Ohio State 9, Iowa 69. And rushing, Ohio State 3, Iowa 4. And the total, Ohio State at 2 and Iowa at 18. Dan, let's start with Ohio State's offense versus Iowa's defense. What are you watching for?
Well, you've got strength on strength.
Mm-hmm.
Our run offense versus their run defense, and I think where we're going to be able to exploit them, and why I like the over 3.5 touchdowns for the game and over 16.5 for the first half is, our passing offense is what, 14th, you said?
I believe so, yeah.
And their passing defense is 69th. So I just think Will's going to have a big day in the shoe. I think he had that pick last week. I think he's going to come out and have a really good showing. Yeah, I think that's the mismatch there right now. Yeah, I do think we're going to see a little bit more creativity from Chip this week in the run game. I think we might see Trey and Q in the backfield, like in legitimate, times rather than in the wing T at the goal line. But that's kind of what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So one of the things that, and I can't remember who said it. It might have been Dylan Davis, and then I started looking into it. The Iowa does not have their prototypical secondary currently, where they have like eighth-year guys that have seen everything. The Michigan model, essentially, where you have 29-year-old dudes playing at Iowa in their eighth year of eligibility in the secondary. So very young secondary, very, very inexperienced. They don't have the type of safeties and defense, corners that they typically do. So I think Ohio State does have a good day in the, passing the football.
Chad, I do believe that you are correct for most of their secondary. I do believe their number one corner is like 24.
Okay.
But then, everybody else is really young and inexperienced. Yeah. But, I think it was Byrne that highlighted this morning that you'll have a 24-year-old covering an 18-year-old.
Yeah, covering Jeremiah Smith,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would see, I could see them having a good day. Iowa has that, like, they're built a lot like Michigan. They have a couple really good interior guys, defensive tackles, and they have one linebacker that flies around and makes plays. So I will be interested to see if this is the game where either Tegra or Austin get 90% of the reps. Yeah. That's something, like, if you're watching for like something, the game within the game, because I'm not worried about Donnie and Seth at all. Like, that left side of that line, and I'm okay. But we'll be interested to see how that impacts the running game, especially, and if they try to work outside in the C gap a little more, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some counters as well to try to get the defensive tackles out of position.
Yeah, it's hard to tell if we're going to get that creative. I just said I do think Chip's going to get creative. I think it's going to be more with looks than anything. Last time they brought a first round all-world linebacker to Columbus was in 22, and like you said earlier, we hung 55 on him. Now, granted, we were throwing the ball all over the field because it was CJ,
right?
But I don't know. I'm just not worried about this game. I do think it's going to be a good test. It's the first time we're going to see a legit, fundamentally sound, good, solid defense. I got a funny feeling that we're going to make a statement this week.
Okay. Iowa, I know Ryan Day beats who he's supposed to. It's just like ever since that Urban Meyer hiccup a few years ago, and Iowa always plays us tough, I'm always like, ugh. And you and I are old enough to remember the overtime game against Iowa several years ago, and Pelfrey has to kick, a field goal in overtime to win it, and I think it was Pelfrey. And it just, yeah, they give me the heebie-jeebies, man.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Ryan, he's really, really good at having them win the games they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, one of them's a little bit closer than you'd like, but
Maryland.
There really hasn't even been many of those.
Yeah. That Maryland game
outside of Penn State.
Yeah. But that Maryland game a couple years ago too, it was went down to the wire. So
Yeah.
that night game where they had to sit outside under the tent because they didn't have enough room for them in the visiting locker room. Yeah, that one. So, all right. So you said that you expect Chip to get creative in the run game. I think Big Willie Style has a nice game with the passing offense. Dan, Iowa's offense against Ohio State's defense. The news broke yesterday. Joking. Tyleik Williams will be playing on Saturday, which we all knew last week when they made him available, but they held him out. Thank you for, I told you, I spoke to Ryan Day. I took his call. I told him to rest Tyleik. He did. He listened to me. He told Jimmy, he said, Jimmy, don't put Tyleik in there. So what do you expect this week? Tyleik Williams being back, our defense. Caleb Johnson, Dan had some shining words for Ohio State, the running back from Iowa. So what are you thinking?
Who?
Yeah. He might tell
that was a pretty interesting thing though, because Ryan got asked about it, JT got asked about it, Jack got asked about it. Ryan's like, I didn't see that, didn't hear that. We can't recruit everybody. Wish everybody from Ohio luck. Blah blah blah. JT more or less said they didn't talk about it. And then Jack's like, oh, yeah, we heard it. Jack got up there with his porn stash.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no, we heard it. Yeah. No, we know. We heard him. Yeah.
Jack's training for Top Gun, man. Didn't you know?
Yeah.
He wants to be Goose.
Yeah. Well, Goose died. So,
yeah.
I think, the players hear that. They hear it. It's motivation. It's bulletin board material. There will be plenty of chirping throughout the game about it.
Oh, yeah.
Every time they tackle him for a loss or a short gain or stop him on, third and short, it'll be discussed throughout the course of the game.
The most interesting thing about him is he's a big back. Like, he's a bigger back.
6 foot 225. He's like kind of Zeke-ish, right?
Yeah. He just doesn't have that top end speed, but
right.
Every time it feels like every time, and I've seen probably 30 of his plays now. Just in screen grabs and stuff, he seems to fall forward every time, and that's the thing that worries me about him. Is those gut punches? Like, he's just one of those guys that, now, if we can get up and we're up 3 scores, that nullifies and neutralizes Caleb Johnson. Yeah. So if we get out early, get to a big lead, take away their ability to really run the football very much. I mean, they're still going to run it. They're Iowa. They're not going to abandon the run, but if you could get up and get out early and get off to the races, it nullifies him to some extent. So it neutralizes that threat. But yeah, I do think he's one of those guys that seems like he gets 3.5, 4 yards every time he touches the ball, and he just kind of leans forward for another yard. So,
yeah, it's interesting. The podcast did a really good job today breaking down, his production versus Trey and Q combined. It's virtually the same production. Trey and Q combined yardage and carries are virtually identical to Caleb Johnson's overall numbers. But one thing they mentioned was, Caleb's one of Caleb's games. He had 180 some yards and 140 on 25 carries, and 144 yards were on 4 carries. And then he had 40 some yards on the other 21. So, and they coupled that with saying that we haven't given up a rushing attempt over or a run over 20 yards yet this year. So, something's got to give. This is one of those games where something's got to give, right?
Right.
We got a great rushing defense. They got a great rushing offense. What's going to give? My money's on Ohio State's going to hold true to their performance so far.
Well, my other thing of note, and I mentioned it last week, and you're going to see more. I think you're going to see more 4-3 stack this week. So I think you're going to see Arvell at the mic, Cody and Sonny at the will.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see more of a traditional defense this Saturday than you have in the past. So I don't think you'll see as much nickel. I think you'll see press and you might see some nickel with a cover 3 with 2 linebackers, but it'll be Arvell and Cody. And that I think you're going to see a lot of that. So be ready for a 4-3. Be ready for Arvell at the mic. And I think that I think they're just going to try to, keep Caleb Johnson in check and force McNamara to try to push the ball down the field. So
yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised if we see two linebackers with Latham coming down into the box a little bit more than he has this year. To
you
be
could
kind of
definitely see
that third guy, run support guy, and have Caleb play center field. You know what's funny, and here this is just another example of Ohio State fandom, right?
Yeah,
We're all in chat groups, we're all on Twitter, and the outrage over CJ Hicks not being on the field before this year was nonstop. Like, what's going on? And it was there again at the beginning of this year. Now all of a sudden, that Arvell has come on. It's like CJ's a forgotten guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's even clamoring for. People are clamoring for Arvell to be in over Sonny. Like I know, Juck's a huge critic of Sonny so far this year.
Yeah,
versus the run, versus the pass, everything. I mean, so it's really, really interesting. It's sort of like my point last week. If Sane went in there like everybody wanted him to, and he looked awful, they would turn on him in a second. It's just the flavor of the month that people are, going for.
Yeah, I think that, Juck's been on Sonny. I think personally, and you and I have talked about this, I think that Sonny will be an edge, and that's just where he's going to end up. And perhaps the frustration is maybe people feel like he's, like they thought he was going to do more in the position that he's in, and maybe he's not in the right position, and So for what it's worth. So you talked about chat groups, man. I do this fun thing where like I screenshot things from chat groups that just piss me off, and then I'll think about them for a little bit, and then I'll just move on. So this person in one of the community posts, and I muted this community post again because I just can't. But it says, "Are we satisfied with Will Howard? I wanted to see him take the spotlight, but Julian Sand has done it as a freshman."
That was a total troll job. The guy, he even came back. The reason you started to see like a bunch of different variations of that same tweet because somebody posted one they were serious about.
The Carnell Tate one.
Yeah, it might have been the Carnell Tate one.
It was the Carnell Tate one. Yeah. Okay.
And then everybody started. They were more or less trolling that tweet by posting stupid stuff like what you just read.
I knew the Quinshon Jenkins ones was
yeah. Funny. There was like 6 or 7 variations of them, right? And it was a total troll job.
Okay. Well, at least that was a troll job, even though the Carnell Tate one wasn't.
That's our fandom, man. That's our fans, right?
Yeah. Tell me you don't know ball without telling me you don't know ball. Are we satisfied with Carnell Tate? Anyways. All right, man. Well, got a score prediction for me?
Yeah, I'm going to go. What was last week? 38-7?
38-7.
I'm going to go 45-10.
I like it. I'll take it.
I was leaning 6. Like, keep them out of the end zone. I'm going to go 45-10.
Okay. I'll take it. I landed on 41-13. So, because I think I was going to get a couple field goals.
Yeah.
And maybe a late touchdown. So.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Will doesn't account for 5 touchdowns tomorrow. Maybe, 2 or 3 passing and, 2 or 3 running.
Yeah. I think the thing I'm watching for the most, I think the first quarter-ish could be closer than everybody wants to feel comfortable with. But just hang in there, guys. It'll be all right. So, all right.
I mean, just for you number people, like the first half line, the first quarter line was like Ohio State by 6.5, and total points were at 9.5. And I mean, I love those first quarter total overs. But even I stayed away from that because, to your point, if Iowa gets the ball first, I think they're going to run the clock down on every single play. I think they're going to play versus us like Kentucky played versus Georgia.
Yep. Try to hold the ball, try to keep our offense off the field, give us as many opportunities, the fewest opportunities possible.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And then it'll be interesting to see how they do that. All right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us today. My plan currently is, Dan, I'm planning to go to the game. So,
tomorrow?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it. Yeah, I am planning to go to the game tomorrow. As of right now, I have been feeling considerably under the weather the last 2 days, so just feeling very, very run down. And so We'll see. We'll see. I'd like to go. My son really wants to go, so that's probably why I'll go. But other than that, you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy the game. Thanks for listening. As always, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. We continue our march forward towards that 500 mark. We picked up a few more this week, so thank you guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of you. Thank you, Dan, for the best bets. I like those a lot.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it. And just for the record, I think I mentioned this up front. Like, I don't gamble anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have in the past, and I've found it. You guys should be grateful, because if I was actually placing these bets, I'd probably be 0-8. So the fact that I'm not makes it more dependable.
Well, there you go. All right, guys, enjoy the game, enjoy the weekend, stay safe out there, and as always,
Go Bucks.